But basically, synchronicity is one of the most impactful practices, and right, I refer to it as a noun, but using synchronicities is one of the most impactful practices I've had in my life in terms of actually pointing the way towards alignment for you in terms of what you're more or less supposed to be doing, at least in my belief, and what I would say with full conviction, what you're supposed to be doing, where you're supposed to be, and more, just in terms of living an aligned, fulfilled life. And so, right, we have here what is meant by synchronicity. I'll just read this out loud and I'll add. It's a regular word with regular common meaning, right? Two apparently disconnected events that coincidentally occur at the same time. One event may even appear to have caused the other event. We can conclude there was a cause-effect interaction between these two events, connecting and linking the two events, right? And then there is a special meaning, which is referring to, right, top is more of coincidence, obvious coincidence, you generally can tell there. And then the special meaning is synchronicity, where it's, at least to your eye and your understanding, something that is not visibly tied by cause and effect, by causation. And then we'll bring it back here. Yeah, here's just more and apparently poor quality explanation. But other words for synchronicity that I like to use are meaningful coincidences. I think it says that somewhere on here. Meaningful coincidences, whispers from God, winks from God. I think they even use in like Hallmark Channel movies, which is funny. If you've ever heard of Vadim Zealand and his books, Reality Transurfing and things along those lines, he calls it a rustle in the stars, right? Kind of getting into the mystical term area. But to put it most simply, it's that meaningful coincidence. And if you're not familiar with the term, you've definitely had a synchronicity before. Some really, really simple examples would be you think of someone, right, even your mother or whatever, you think of someone and then a second later or shortly after that, they text you or they call you, right? Another thing would be a different kind of synchronicity, and I'm happy to talk about classifying them, but a different kind would be like you're in the shower and you get shower thoughts, right? These aren't just random blurbs and ideas and thoughts that come in. They're actually good ideas and helpful suggestions, if you've ever followed them, normally end up with a positive ROI. And so, let's see, I'm just going to slide over to the other one. Oh yeah, here's the meaningful coincidences line. And this is where basically you can follow the general track. So, now that we've more or less outlined what a synchronicity is, the practice that has been extremely helpful for me is one, first, of course, understanding what it is, but then secondarily, bringing that awareness and tracking them in something that I call, you can call it a synchronicity journal or synchronicity mapping. Because one, visual representation or a representation to help better understand it, I would say is like literally they're GPS indicators for your path, right? Right turn here, left turn here, or even if you've ever seen the Disney movie Brave, where they have their little like lights in the forest, where it's like she follows these kind of mystical flame things. Almost the same way, except right, you can't see them visibly. And so they act, like I said, as GPS markers. But part of the problem, especially in the beginning, is you may not recognize the connectiveness between them. And right, if you're unfamiliar with this or you haven't ever acted on before, definitely it's something that is a little bit outside even the logical realm, if not the natural realm here. So it does require faith and belief to follow, even if you don't understand how this is connected to this or why you should be, pursuing doing a backflip in the park. Random example. And so what you do is when you experience a synchronicity, whether it be from meditating, from a shower, from literally something like, right, this person texts you, or you get a thought out of the blue, I need to call this guy, is to pursue them. Because this is from Sun Tzu, if you've read The Art of War, opportunities multiply as they are seized. When you act on one synchronicity, just like when you follow a GPS marker, more will appear. And these synchronicities may start out super small in terms of like, oh, you should research this subject. But as you pursue and are rewarded for them, you get closer and closer to that path, or even just like positive returns on your efforts that are basically not even direct returns, but asymmetric returns, which is a word I love to use. I like to pursue asymmetric returns in my life, because just like Davis was saying in that beginning point, it's where, hey, if you put in X, you get out Y. That's not this case. It's, I might put out X and I get in who knows what. You can expect, like, if I give you $1 and you have a promise to double it, that's not the case in asymmetric returns, as is the same for synchronicity. Where literally, to give you a more recent example, how many of you guys know who Kurt Casey is? Okay, yeah, so, nice, Big E. So, funny enough, like, kind of a synchronistically tied circumstances of events are, I saw a post, and I've only known about the guy for a couple months, but back in September, I saw a post from him on Instagram where the guy was posted up in Medellin, and I texted Jake, or sent him the post on IG, and I was like, hey, we should meet this guy. And thought nothing whatsoever, nothing of it. And it was just more of like, you can even call all of this leaning more into the intuition side of things and strengthening intuition. And funny enough, what was that, Tuesday, I think? He puts up a story and says, and for those of you in the big Columbia chat, you probably saw me ask about this. He says, hey, does anybody have a MAGA hat? Or can you get a MAGA hat in Medellin? And I knew Brother Emilis here was actually going to be coming. He was in Miami and was going to be coming to Medellin the next day. So having no connection whatsoever to Kurt before, I swipe him and say, hey, I have 2 coming in tomorrow. And Big E goes on an absolute mission trying to find them. And so just by following even like this slightest intuitive suggestion, like it almost like a slight push that way, especially in the beginning, what it feels like, and following that up with belief and faith that it will act favorably, you're rewarded. And so I think even Nick, who's, bless his poor soul, is not doing so well right now, Nick swiped up too in the same way and said, hey, yeah, I can get you hats. But Emilis was already on it. I sent him pictures of these hats. And literally on Wednesday, which is, 2 days ago, he comes over to our apartment, meets all of us, got to see the guys, got to start building a relationship there, which for a guy like me who's traveling all around the world and really interested in adventure, a relationship like that could have who knows what kind of dividends. Like, I mean, even if the dude shouts you out in a story, that can be a positive ROI in terms of directing followers. But, things I'm looking to set up are, okay, I see this guy likes wild adventure. Something I've always wanted to do here in Colombia is you can take a cargo ship, more or less. You can ride a cargo ship from the coast, from a place in El Choco, which is up north on the Pacific coast, down south of Buenaventura. Kirkkazi appeal here, however you say his last name, is it also happens to go through paramilitary FARC territory, which makes things pretty interesting, right? And so it's like we're suggesting a trip like that, and then I don't know if it'll happen or not, but that's a possibility for the future. And so that's something simple where if I would have just dismissed it and not had all this previous experience of acting on things like this, like these little, another word if you've ever read Think and Grow Rich is autosuggestion, as referred to a suggestion coming from the subconscious or the superconscious mind. And right, if I hadn't done this, who knows? But even this has been a heck of a story and really interesting. Like, I told some old people who I had no idea, follow them pretty rapidly back home, and they're like, oh my gosh! And it's like, hey, I made their day better because now they know somebody who knows them, right? And so that's, frankly, like I said, one of the most positive experiences ever. And for me, why I believe in it so much and I follow it so actively is, like I said, I believe everyone is given a specific path. It is your choice to follow that path, and one of the best ways to become more aligned and walk on that journey and meet the people you need and really like make life much simpler, not always less difficult, but much simpler, is by following things like this, because they are literally directions meant for you, not just the let's watch a YouTube video on this, but it's like, hey, you can skip XYZ step by following this and then meeting this person or whatever it may be. And so that's everything on synchronicity. I guess I'll wrap up with, if you haven't had them before, and actually defining what the mapping involves, is if you've never had a synchronicity, the first way that I always recommend guys to get them is to meditate. And I would say you do breathwork way more than I do. You probably get them from breathwork too.
I meditate. Well, I'm a little confused about the difference between intuition and a synchronicity, because from what I've had some crazy synchronicities happen where I'm like they're like, this has to be a simulation, where it's like, there's no way that like this aligned so perfectly right now. It's weird. And I see that as something that's like definitely a sign.
Mm-hmm.
But the intuition, from what you were describing, it's just kind of like this inner knowing, this desire. So are you saying like synchronicities, both of them?
Yeah, so that's where like we get into like what I was talking about earlier, the categorization
Mm-hmm.
of them, where I'd say like that, what you're talking about is, or even something as simple as angel numbers, we were talking about this the other day on the congruency call, is confirmation, synchronicity.
Yeah.
You're in the right place at the right time. Maybe it's like you're not really sure what's going on, but it's you're doing the right things, keep going on this path, follow that.
Mm-hmm.
Reassurance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it may be more of the direct GPS indicator type of vibe,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so if you wanted to differentiate them, that's more of like you have like autosuggestion, intuition. But yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
When you have like a different category there. And so, sometimes it's, holy cow, like that's so wild, right? And then other times it's like, oh, I've had, 444 and 333 and 1010 and like literally happened 10 times today. And it's like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
I'm at a super high level of vibration and getting that. But anyways, meditation is one great way I recommend you get synchronicity. It's just being receptive and listening in general. So if you're somebody who's always listening to music, whether that be in the car, that may not be the case here, or in the shower, cut that out. Because when you drain, like that's part of it. When you have all this stimulation all the time, it's hard to hear some of those things. So stop listening to that music all 24/7. If you're on the gym, like a great productive walk, in properly safe areas here, as well as possibly a workout or other environments like that. Like I love it in the shower. I meditate in the shower. But in general, meditation is a great way to go about listening for them and seeking them. And then when you get them, when you have a synchronicity, even if it's something as simple as, oh, I've had angel numbers this many times today, is to pay attention to the entire context of the situation. In terms of, okay, I was thinking about this or talking to this person or doing this when this occurred, right? Because soon enough, whether it's clear or not immediately, you'll be able to start drawing a map and connecting the pieces, especially if you're starting from a blank slate in terms of you're not really sure what you're supposed to do, what direction you're supposed to go in, all these kind of things. That's when they get more of that GPS indicator like. Right, and so you can see, oh, if I get 7 synchronicities around basket weaving, it's probably something I should look into, right? Or for whatever reason, every time I talk to Talon, this happens. Okay, there's something to be further discovered here. And it could be as simple as that, where it's like a little bit of a nod, but when you follow it, like I said, you're rewarded with more opportunity. And so that's the way why it's important to label everything. Okay, this happened, this is what I was thinking about, here's what was going on, because then you can go back and investigate. And if you've fallen off the path, the closer you are to your path, the more happen, right? And that can look like angel numbers all the time, having the same conversation with multiple people, having those like, holy cow, how did this just happen? Like, I haven't told anybody this, but this person just said something I've written down in their journal 3 years ago. That's like, whoa, you are in your pocket, right? But if you ever get out of the pocket too, they're one of the best tools. If you get out of alignment, you go back to this and pick something you haven't acted on, and then bang, you're right back on that path, just by following that and trusting and believing. And yeah, any questions off of that? We'll go with Nikolai first and then Max.
Yeah, I was reading something from Dan Coe.
Okay.
Are you guys familiar with Dan Coe?
Yeah.
Yeah, great guy. Great, just in terms of understanding focus and being very aware. He's suggesting that there are like good things that happen and bad things that happen, and we correlate these good and bad things with certain cues. So for example, if you walk into a room and you see, let's just put it out there, a book that reminds you of a bad memory, that is going to automatically trigger some sort of a habit. And if you completely remove that book from the table and you never see it because it's out of your environment, sort of linking to James Clear's Atomic Habits, then you don't necessarily ever have that thought triggered again. So sort of correlating with this, do you think you can prime your environment or get rid of distractions or add certain habits to increase the likelihood that you have like these types of moments? And do you think those like correlate at all? Or your environment.
For sure. I mean, that's what, like, if you've noticed by following synchronicities, you're supposed to be in these areas or whatever, it's like you can follow that and map it out and be like, okay, I'm going to engineer my circumstances and my environments and everything to literally optimize it for more positive ROI in terms of synchronicity or encouragement or whatever it is you're looking for. And yeah, 100%. Like, that's where I think you should always be in engineering every aspect of your life, you know, and there's parts where serendipity and synchronicity in general can come in. But especially when you're acting on that clarity that you've received by following it and seeking it, you're really priming yourself for more. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a generalized question, but like, I've had a lot of synchronicities over the year about one like very specific thing that like I believe is my purpose, and I feel like, you know, I would get the synchronicity and like tap into it, and then try to fully integrate that into my life, and then along the way would just get like completely distracted. It's like I know this is supposed to be on purpose, but then I get caught up, you know, putting my energy into this job or this business or this or that, and it's like it's a constant realignment. And there have been some times where like, bro, like it's very clearly telling me like this is what I need to do, but I've noticed this pattern of like coming to that realization, working like a little bit, but just getting like caught in all these traps of the matrix, and then coming back to it again over and over and over. So I know you work with people and you're into this a lot. Like, what? I know this is a generalized question also because it's kind of personalized, but what is the difference, or what do you think can be changed in terms of like having it stick versus having it not stick? You know?
Yeah. So there's a couple different things I'd say to there, and I don't know everything about your scenario, but generally in the first place, one thing you look at is psychology in the brain. And this is an issue probably all of us have dealt with at one point or another, and maybe still deal with. And, you know, part of that's the upper limit, or, you know, the glass ceiling idea, where basically, not in a bad way, unfortunately or fortunately for us, your brain is designed to keep you in comfort. And what that means is it does not understand that this is a good thing. What that means is comfort being familiar. And so, if you don't have the awareness, and not that I'm saying you don't, but if you may not have the awareness that, hey, you know, I am doing this and I actively have to push past this resistance of my brain, it will do everything it can to put you right back in what it knows and where it's comfortable. And so you actually have to that's where you physically, right, break the ceiling, push past the upper limit. And it feels uncomfortable, and you have to do things for longer. It's not just building a habit. It's literally like stopping out the old ones, because what you're doing is making your brain comfortable with the new situation, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's really one thing I would say. And then the second, or I might even have three total. The second thing I would say is God, the universe, whichever way you choose to do it, right, will sometimes test you to see, okay, are you ready, or is this really what you're about? And what that's looked like for me in the past is the first one. I had a huge intuition to go to Bali, right, and synchronicities around it, where it was like, when I was first getting into this whole online business world, I was like, man, I had already wanted to go to Bali previously, and then like I was just thinking about it. I had found pictures, and then that same day, another guy that I met was like, hey, I want to go to Bali. What do you think, man? I was like, whoa, yeah. And then another guy says the same thing, and then boom, we're planning this trip. I don't even know how I'm going to get there, right? And it's funny, I'm pursuing it. I'm taking action towards it. I make the money to go 2 weeks before. And then another interesting thing, and this is where like my parents had no idea about this online world thing. This is my final semester at college, and I just knew I was supposed to pursue it. Also, this was where Bali had just reopened in March, and so you needed a COVID vaccine. And I told my dad, and all of a sudden my dad goes into overdrive, and he's like, Will, he's sending me news articles where like people get eaten by rats in Southeast Asian and Indonesian prisons, all these kind of things. And I'm getting this giant mental like attack bomb built up from my stinking dad over here, and worried about all these other things. But guess what? That was more or less 1,000%, in my opinion, these were tests. Yeah. Because guess what? As soon as I got on that plane, smooth sailing, no problems whatsoever.
Mm.
Everything fell away before. It was, let me show them there, right? And the third thing, which is basically pretty tied into this, is the trials will continue until the lesson is learned.
Mm.
So that would be another thing I would look at, and study the patterns there.
Mhm.
In terms of, okay, is there something that continues popping up? Is this a personal, limitation or problem or whatever it may be, or distraction that I haven't yet solved, I haven't solved. Well, that was the chair in the mic. Or something that I haven't yet dealt with,
Mm.
right? And I would investigate those three things and then see what happens.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Thanks, y'all.